Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Let's take a look at the headlines. Government focuses on sparking innovation in TNT. Sod turning for new packing house. And efforts are being made to preserve and protect Trinidad and Tobago's local heritage. Thank you for joining us. The Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development through the Caribbean Industrial Research Institute, CARIRI, hosted its workshop on building competitiveness through innovation in ICT. Science and Technology Minister Dr. The Honorable Rupert Griffith says developing the ICT sector will aid in the diversification process of Trinidad and Tobago's economy.
Exploring the human imagination is a key toward expanding and opening doors of creativity. This according to Planning and Development Minister Bo Tiwari, who says focus ought to be placed on harnessing this talent and resource if Trinidad and Tobago is to see the growth in the innovation sector. Speaking at the workshop on building competitiveness through innovation in ICT, hosted by the Caribbean Industrial Research Institute, CARIRI, the minister outlined this as a part to be taken if new industries are to take off in the future.
The only thing we have, and especially in a small country, is the imagination of the people who live in it. And Trinidad and Tobago is a very lucky place. It's because it is a multicultural, extremely diverse, extremely energetic, mutually engaging society within the land space. And it is the point of the crisscrossing of cultures from all over the world.
The conference keynote speaker, Frans Johansson, Chief Executive Officer of the Medisci Group and author of the Medisci Effect and the Click Movement, gave a high-energy presentation on innovative ways of enhancing the ICT sector in Trinidad and Tobago. He urged patrons to think outside of the box when coming up with new business ideas.
Success comes down to moments like this. These are unexpected meetings, random encounters, serendipitous conversations that can set you on a path that has nothing to do with what your stated strategy is. And we see this play out over and over again, even when you reflect upon your own careers. Now, why is it that if this is true, we are so consistently pulled back into trying to plan it out? And the reason for that is because we rely on logic in trying to reach success. And of course we have to rely on logic, because what else are we supposed to rely on? If we didn't rely on logic, what would we rely upon? Not logic. And that doesn't make sense by definition. But what happens if we rely on logic and trying to reach success? Because if we do that, we tend to believe that this only works if we're the only ones who can be logical, right? But if other people can be logical, they're going to be able to reach the same conclusions you are, and you're going to find yourself having lots of competitors.
Science and Technology Minister Dr. Rupert Griffith says his ministry will seek to unveil a 4-year plan aimed at enhancing and growing the ICT sector in Trinidad and Tobago.
The plan, branded Smart TT 2014 to 2018, is a panoramic and comprehensive recrafting of our approach. Through a national consultative process, the 4-year plan gives emphasis to specific key areas of focus. And what are these areas? Innovation and human and capital development, access and digital inclusion, e-business and ICT sector development, infrastructure development, and indeed, e-government.
Minister Tiwari says changing this type of thinking can affect all of Trinidad and Tobago.
We must stop thinking ourselves as a country of small possibilities. We are a small country. That is true. And the country itself will never grow much in size, even if we do a lot of reclamation. But we must stop thinking of ourselves as a country of limited possibilities. And the only place you can make that change is where? In the human imagination. That is the point I want to make for you. The only place that you can begin to set your dreams loftier, your goals higher, the bar higher, is in your imagination.
Trinidad and Tobago will play host to the 8th installment of the America's Competitiveness Forum, which will be hosted by the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development in 2014. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
It's being hailed as an historical sod-turning ceremony, the construction of the third packing house that will be operated in strategic locations by the National Agricultural Marketing and Development Corporation, NAMDEVCO. The ceremony for this new packing house facility took place at Brickfield, Tabaquite.
The Minister of Agriculture, Devant Mirage, says the ministry is striving every day to make positive changes in the agriculture industry in order to help improve the livelihood of farmers. The minister says he is aware of the challenges farmers face on a daily basis, but assures the Ministry of Agriculture has their best interest at heart. Thus, the third packing house is seen as one of the key components as a thrust towards boosting the agriculture sector.
But it is a team effort of the cabinet. We are here today on this side because Dr. Rudal Munilal worked with NAMDEVCO and the Ministry of Food Production so we could acquire the property once Minister Rambachan held his consultations with the farmers and he was in agreement with the site.
The minister says he strongly feels that coming into the rural communities and bringing in services and amenities can make a positive impact and change the scope of agriculture as well as the production output of farmers.
The Dynamic Tabaquite Farmers Association will benefit immensely from this facility. The Tabaquite packing house, this one here, will cover some 1,700 square meters, and the facility will comprise of a chilled receiver bay, a processing area, a refrigerated storage area, office facility for staff, and an important training facility for farmers. We want farmers to practice best practices, international practices. The entire project cost approximately $18 million from the start to beginning, and it will take approximately between 6 to 8 months to complete.
The Brickfield Tabaquite packing house has also included the community in the design stages of the facility. The packing house that will be constructed in Tabaquite will serve a number of functions. It will sort, grade, package and release back goods to the farmers. MP for the Tabaquite area, Dr. Suraj Ratan Rambachan, also spoke about this initiative and also made an appeal to the Minister of Agriculture.
I think we sometimes don't spend enough time to appreciate the contributions of people in these rural districts to our own development as a nation. Just imagine if we had to be, subject ourselves to the vagaries of price increases and cause a lot of food to be imported for us to eat. As I say that also, I want to make an appeal to the Minister on behalf of the farmers in this area to look at the importation of cabbage into the country. The importation of cabbage is placing very great stress upon the farmers in terms of their own pricing. And it might be even feasible to say that cabbage coming into the country might be dumped in the country.
Mr. Jainarayan Maraj from the board of NAMDEVCO also delivered brief remarks. He had one proposal for the farmers of Tabaquite.
I want to suggest to farmers, take the opportunity to put trust. I know it is a difficult thing after all that you've gone through, but it is important to note that if you don't trust this program that we are undergoing, you might miss the boat.
This is the launch of the second of 5 packing houses that will be constructed and located in strategic locations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Construction is in progress at the Brecking Castle House, and today the ministry, along with NAMDEVCO, turns the sod for this packing house at Brickfield Tabaquite. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
When we come back, an increase in exports to China. Stay with us. It is time for this country to increase its focus on exporting gas to Asia. This is the belief of Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, Senator the Honorable Kevin Ramnarine.
Minister Ramnarine expresses this view while addressing the media recently following a cabinet meeting. He says the United States is less dependent on Trinidad and Tobago following a large find of gas in their country. He explains a new market would have to be sought as a result.
The United States has enough shale gas for 100 years, which of course means that we as a country will have to start to look for new markets for our energy products, because predominantly our energy products go to the United States. 63% of our methanol goes to that country, 85% of our ammonia goes to the United States, and 39% of the output of the Pointe-a-Pierre refinery goes to the United States. So of course, nothing is static, and the world is changing. And the same way we started to look for new markets for our LNG, we will also be looking for new markets in the future for those other products.
Minister Ramnarine says, given the expected increase in China's demands for natural gas, he thinks it is a market which this country could expand into.
Trinidad and Tobago is a supplier of energy to China. In 2011, we supplied 4 cargoes of liquefied natural gas to that country. And in 2012, we supplied 5 cargoes, and we expect that demand from China to continue to increase.
The Energy Minister says, in keeping with the potential increase in worldwide demand, over 150,000 acres of state land is open for bidding for oil companies to drill for oil and gas. He adds that sometime this month, another round of deepwater bids will also be made available, as this country seeks to ensure there is enough oil and gas to satisfy new markets. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Introducing solar energy to rural communities, education programs to inform people on how to save electricity or reduce their use of it, and increased assistance for those who benefit from the Utilities Assistance Program. These are just some of the plans the Ministry of Public Utilities plans to implement within the next coming months.
The Utilities Assistance Program. It's a program which assists beneficiaries of old age pension, public assistance and disability grants by paying their T&TEC and WASA bills. Minister of Public Utilities, the Honorable Nizam Baksh, says persons who have applied for this assistance will now be given a greater chance to qualify for the program. Usually, persons who apply must be using no more than 400 kilowatts of electricity an hour. He explains currently many of the almost 1,300 persons who applied for the assistance go over that usage. Now, he says, government has decided to increase that limit so more persons can benefit.
1,286 applicants for electricity. Many of these exceeded the prescribed limit, in which we have 400 kilowatts. Once you honor that, you could benefit. But what we have recognized too, that from our surveys and so, that there are many persons on the lower economic rung of the economic ladder that they have unable to meet their bills, but have surpassed the 400 kilowatt per hour. What we have done here is the Cabinet has agreed to increase this from 400 to 500 so that they could benefit, more people will benefit in this instance.
Minister Baksh adds that the ministry will embark upon an education campaign to teach persons how to conserve electricity. He explains there are simple things which can be done to conserve electricity, such as the use of energy-saving light bulbs or turning off lights when we leave a room. The minister says there are also plans to introduce solar energy to communities which do not have an electricity supply due to economical and logistical reasons.
I know that we have had people coming to us who live in deep rural communities, and it's difficult to take electricity to them because of the cost, and only a few houses and so. So we are looking at some ways and means that we could assist those people. And just like the Minister of Energy has started some programs in the community centers where they're using solar energy, we are looking at the possibility of providing solar energy for those far-flung few houses in the rural communities as well.
If you want more information on the Utilities Assistance Program, you can visit the Ministry of Public Utilities website at www.mpu.gov.tt, click the Services tab and select Utilities Assistance Program. Or you can also call the Ministry at 628-9500 and dial extension 1121. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Concerted efforts are being made to preserve and protect Trinidad and Tobago's local heritage after years of neglect and mismanagement. The current administration has made this a priority area, with the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration driving forth this effort.
We have to teach our children about the rich, colorful history of our nation, the importance of our culture and heritage, the story of our struggles, the tales of our triumphs, the sense of national pride and citizenry, and a better understanding of what we can be to our nation, to our fellow men.
You can't have a future without knowledge of the past. This is why it is imperative that historic sites and buildings are preserved in Trinidad and Tobago. For years, citizens have been calling on the government to protect many of the heritage landmarks that have succumbed to the elements and years of neglect. The Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration has taken up the plight and is putting measures in place for the further advancement of the restoration, conservation and maintenance of TNT's heritage. The latest step in this direction is a 2-day workshop at Queen's Hall, which was organized by the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, the Citizens for Conservation and the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration. Stakeholders gathered to share thoughts, ideas and visions and to strategize a way forward.
We want positive results from this workshop. We want you to be honest about our deficiencies, identify the problems, and suggest creative ways around them. I really want everybody to start thinking outside the box, because following strictly to rules and whatnot hasn't gotten us anywhere. We need to start thinking of creative ways to do and manage the things that we are supposed to do where cultural heritage is concerned.
Our efforts here have really been, so far, I wouldn't say in vain, but they've been really, really tough efforts over the last few years trying to get focus on the need for preserving our built heritage in particular. We have actually gotten the government finally, after so many years, to agree on the procedure for listing heritage properties. We have finally gotten that in the last few weeks, and we've also finally gotten the Attorney General to agree to draft the legal format for listing, which means that we could now have the properties, the many properties that the National Trust has compiled on an inventory of properties of interest. We could now finally begin the legal process of legally protecting many of these sites.
The major responsibilities of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is listing and acquiring such heritage property as the Trust considers appropriate, permanently preserving lands that are heritage sites and, as far as practicable, retaining their natural features and conserving the animal and plant life, preserving, maintaining, repairing and servicing or arranging for the preservation of heritage property, and where such property comprises buildings, augmenting the amenities of such buildings and their surroundings. Other responsibilities include making provisions for the access to and enjoyment of heritage property by the public, encouraging research into heritage property, making the public aware of the importance of our heritage, and advising government on the care of our heritage. Head Secretariat of the International National Trust Organization, Catherine Leonard, was the guest of honor who will be assisting and guiding the stakeholders in achieving their goals. Meanwhile, Minister Dikoto revealed that necessary attempts are being made to have the Historical Restoration Unit of the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure come under the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Promotion of economic integration and cooperation among CARICOM members is being looked at differently. This is some 7 years after the declaration of the single market readiness. Implementing the economy part of the CSME is yet to be achieved. This was just one of the many topics raised during AmCham's breakfast meeting on trade and development within the CARICOM region.
Local businessmen met to discuss the viability and role of the CSME, Caribbean Single Market Economy, has in the competitiveness of trade and development within the CARICOM region. Originally envisaged as providing more opportunities to produce and sell goods and services and to attract investment within the region, leaders are now looking at revisiting its objectives. So far, implementation has seen trade improved, as well as the sharing of skilled trained workers among Caribbean states. However, it is yet to see the regional integration bring about a single economy. As former CARICOM Secretary General and Ambassador Extraordinary of Trinidad and Tobago to CARICOM, Sir Edwin Carrington says, implementing this part of it requires more than rethinking and restructuring, but deep consideration of the potential effects this can have on the region.
The issue of the single economy, that E, is extremely intense in depth and in breadth. To move to a single economy calls for a number of issues, and I feel that one of the things we should do is first to ensure that we properly and fully implement the single market, then to see how from there we could spring on to the single economy. And one correction, I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that the treaty asks for single currency, asks for convertibility, but we had one meeting on that issue of convertibility and single stock exchange, which you as business people would be concerned about. And we could not even get agreement to another meeting, to have another meeting, much more to take it further.
The issue was discussed during the American Chamber of Commerce of Trinidad and Tobago AmCham meeting on trade and development in the CARICOM region. Chamber President Hugh Howard says the fulfillment of this must consider a few key elements.
Free movement of capital and skilled labor, the right of establishment, a common external tariff, a common trade policy, and a competition policy. And these were to be complemented by a common currency, convergent economic, monetary, and fiscal policies, harmonization of relevant laws, as well as a disputes settlement regime. The CSME was also designed to fully insert the region in the global economy by strengthening trade links with traditional and non-traditional trading partners. However, to date, these laudable objectives have not been fully realized.
However, maintaining this level of competitiveness within the region requires a move away from traditional markets and products. Dr. Anthony Gonzalez, professor at the Institute of Business at UWI, in his presentation says CARICOM continues to maintain stable competitiveness when compared to global market trends.
The bottom line on competitiveness, especially when you come to talk about small countries and small firms, is whether they're exporting and where they're exporting. To whom are they exporting? I think that's, for me, the main criteria that I tend to look at. CARICOM, Caribbean, is more or less steady at the same 3-4%, fluctuating from here. Canada, the same thing. And significantly, the rest of the world. The rest of the world seems to be taking over now from the slack in the American market. So it seems that we are developing markets in the rest of the world which were not there before. And I guess this must be probably, I haven't been able to study it properly, but this could probably be things like exporting more to Asia, the gas and so forth, compared to what we did before.
Under the current CSME, region members benefit from free movement of goods and services, free movement of capital, common trade policy, which relates to matters related to internal and international trade, and a coordinated external trade policy negotiated on joint basis, as well as a common external tariff, a rate of duty applied by all members of the market to a product imported from a country which is not a member of the market. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 Report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.